Lord Jesus Christ. Good morning. I am reminded of a Indian legend that said that at one point a son who was trying to earn the rite of passage to become a man, a young boy to become a man, would go into the deep woods with his father. He would go up and they would approach a very large stump that the tree had been cut down, the stump was there. And what would happen is that he would be sat down on the stump and then blindfolded. He would have to sit there all night long, awake, and he could not take the blindfold off. All night long, if he did that, the next morning he'd be considered a man. But if he took the blindfold off, he would not be considered a man. He would have failed his rite of passage. So imagine for yourself sitting on that stump. I mean, sometimes we as human beings in this day of age, we sleep in our house and in the night, and sometimes our house creaks and we're like, oh, what is going on, right? Or we hear something knock at the outside of the door or something strike because of the wind and we get unsettled. But imagine this young boy, probably 12, 13 years old, maybe 14, sitting on this stump the entire night. Maybe some animal walking by, some creak, some whatever happening, noises. And of course, you can't also rule out the imagination, right? All the imaginary noises that somebody can possibly conjure up while blindfolded. And remember, at that time, there's no lights outside. There's only the light of the moon, if it was a clear night. So all night long, a young man had to put up with fear and apprehension and whatever else. As soon as the break of day happened, as soon as he could see any light peeking through the bottom, he was able to take it off. And then in the morning when he took off the blindfold, he would see that his father had sat with him the entire night. He was never alone. It seemed like it. In his mind, it perfectly seemed like it, but he was never left alone. I know that it's going to be strange, the next statement that I make, but this is how my mind works sometimes. But how many of you have ever seen The Simpsons, the cartoon, right? It's been on like almost 40 years. I think every single person at one point is going to see an episode, right? And one of the characters on The Simpsons, you have the father who's kind of a bumbling idiot. You have the mother that's kind of a strong person. You have Bart that's the rebellious one, Lisa, all those characters. And then the next door neighbor is Ned Flanders, right? Anybody know who Ned Flanders is? Ned Flanders is the guy that professes to be a Christian, that goes to the church. At one point, his wife actually dies in the series. He's raising his children by himself. Now, the thing is that Homer is also a Christian, belongs to the same church, right? And Ned is always being ridiculed. Ned is always being ridiculed for, instead of using the F word, he says, oh, phooey, right? And we laugh at that, right? We laugh. He would loan Homer something, and he was like, well, Homer, can you give me that back? He says, I'm not going to give you nothing back. It's mine now, right? All the terrible things that Homer had done to him throughout the years, nonetheless, Ned Flanders always did the right thing. He always did the right thing in teaching his children, and even the kids, when they were in school, they were made fun of. We laughed at that stuff. We laughed at the fact that the Christian, the one that was professing to be a Christian, the one that was living to be a Christian, he was all by himself. all by himself. Not so funny anymore. And then I think to myself, oh Lord, I have become Ned Flanders. Right? I'm all by myself, I feel sometimes. Right? Today we have the gospel reading, of course, the famous walking on the water, right? But purposely did Jesus let them go out into the lake, right? Purposely. He went off by himself. The first time they were caught in a storm and a gale like that, remember that these guys are fishermen. These are lifelong fishermen. They dealt with storms before. And the first time that they had dealt with a storm that was none like anything else, Jesus was asleep at the foot of the ship. Oh, Lord, wake up! We're about to die! Right? We're about to die. Jesus is like, why are you worried? Jesus is fast asleep. He wasn't worried about one thing. And this particular time now, the second time, coming right off the heels, right? How quickly we forget. Coming right off the heel of Jesus feeding 5,000 men, not including women and children. They believe it was like 20,000 people that he fed miraculously with a couple of fish and 5 loaves. Now they're in the middle of the lake at the darkest night, right? At the darkest part of the place, right? There's no sun, there's no moon, because obviously it's a night that has a storm coming, so there's no moon. So they're out there in the dark, communicating with each other. These fishermen knew what to do, so they didn't really need to have sight. They had made it muscle memory in order to steer the boat and do whatever. But all of a sudden, it says that a storm came and they were terrified. They were quaking in their sandals. Right? Say boots, but they weren't wearing boots. They were quaking. We're going to die. Right? We're going to die. All by themselves, forgot every single good thing that Jesus had shown them throughout the time that he had been with. All that stuff just went out the window. And what happens? All of a sudden they see somebody walking on the water. Oh, it's a spirit coming. It's a spirit. It's a ghost. And they're terrified again, right? Somehow it's pitch night and they can see Jesus still in the pitch of night, dark of night. Somehow they can still see Jesus walking toward them on the water. They didn't know who it was. And the first thing he says, now in the translation in the English, it says, I am here, but in the actual Greek, it's oon. I am. I'm here. I am is here. The existing one is here. God is here. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Numerous times Jesus says that to the disciples over and over and over. Don't be afraid. Because the first thing the devil wants to do when he comes into our lives and in every situation is make us fear. Because fear leads us to do many, many things that we normally wouldn't do. Because fear forces us to have preservation of ourself. Right? Preservation of self. These guys had no way to preserve themselves. If the boat flipped over in the middle of the night, who would see them? They're experienced fishermen. Plus Matthew sitting out there, the tax collector, right? Terrified probably beyond measure, not knowing what's going on. And Jesus is like, I'm here. Please don't be afraid. Now Peter asks a question. He says, well, if it is you, Lord, if it is you, if it's really you, bid me to come out on the water. Right? There's 12 guys sitting on the boat, by the way. They're not by themselves. Not one of them was strong enough to say, well, God's going to take care of us. He's taking care of us this long. And he steps out of the water and he starts to take a few steps toward Jesus. And he does what we all do. take our focus off of God. That's what I'm looking at, and I'm thinking about all the things. There is some times where it feels like we're alone. Mm-hmm. It feels like we've been abandoned, forsaken. We become despondent. When we're going through heartaches and going through breakups and we're going through sickness and we're going through COVID and we're going through all these things, we feel like we're alone. And there's these storms in our life that's going on. Right? All these things that are going on in our lives, and it feels like God has abandoned us. Even though Jesus was off praying with his Father, the guys were never alone. But they had to go through that fear, and they had to go through that apprehension, and they had to go through all those things in order for them to realize who God was. See, we always think that God is supposed to do exactly what we want him to do. I want my life to be this way. I want my life to be this way. I want my life to be this way. I want my wife to be the woman that I want her to be. I want my children to be the children I want them to be. I want my family to be the family that I want them to be. I want my church to be the way I want them to be. And lo and behold, you come here. And then when storms happen, you have 120 people going, I don't know what to do. When a storm happens in St. Nectarios, I've seen it a couple times now, I don't know what to do. Let me rebel, let me fight back. Where all the time, especially here in this building, we should be closer to God than anywhere. We should be loving God more than we love ourselves. Again, the commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Amen. We have to learn to do these things. Our foundation, as we read in the epistle, right? Our foundation, the sure foundation, is Jesus Christ himself. What we build on that foundation is up to us. And if you really are thinking correctly, it's not up to us, it's up to God. Because if we're following God, he will build on the foundation what he wants with our cooperation. That synergy of the Holy Spirit. Our cooperation is important. Because we hear in this passage, he says that if you build on the foundation in gold and silver and wood and whatever else, and the fire comes, it's going to destroy whatever you built up. But if you're building on the sure foundation of Christ, if you're building on the sure foundation of his word and his commandments and his livelihood of who he was, because he became a man, then we don't have anything to fear when it's the dark of the night and there's no sun and there's no moon and the storm's beating down and the winds are coming against us and we end up not being able to focus on God. We have to remember, hopefully somebody along the way says, wait a minute, he's right there. But it takes one person to point the way. Typically that's what the priest is for. Sometimes I've met priests that don't know top from bottom either. Some days I haven't. I'll confess that. Some days I've been scared. Some days I've taken my focus off of God. The foundation of Jesus Christ is truth, not my truth. My truth is often skewed by my understanding. My truth is often skewed by what things have happened to be in my life. My truth is often skewed by the things that people say to me and do to me. And oftentimes when I go pray, still sometimes I pray with prejudice. I go to God with a hard heart, a heart that is so hard I can't see reason. The storm's raging in front of me. But then as soon as I point out the way, and I can at least hear the voice of God saying, the existing one is here. He exists in each one of our lives. It doesn't matter if you're a catechumen. It doesn't matter who you are. God is with all of us. Last night, during the Vespers, right after Vespers, I read whatever prologue of Orid readings there is for the day, one of the saints of the day, and a reflection, and I read the homily for the night. And it often says that, it says, and the reflection last night, it said that oftentimes we question the fact, we look at people, right? And we question, how can God allow people like that to thrive, right? Think about any of the hard people that you know in your life. How can you allow that person to do whatever they're doing? Right? I mean, again, you look at a cartoon like The Simpsons, right? And at the very beginning, Simpson, right, Homer Simpson, has this radioactive bar that he takes home from work. I mean, he's oblivious to the world around him. He doesn't care about anyone. He does not care about anyone. And when he's ridiculing Ned Flanders, he is ridiculing the Christians. But remember that Homer Simpson is a member of that same church. He belongs to the same church that Ned Flanders belongs to. We're often the people that are the most terrible when we're throwing the fiery darts to each other. And if you're married or engaged or whatever, and if you're not looking at that person saying, that person is the person that I need to love the most, because if I learn how to love that person the most out of everybody, because I'm going to know the darkness, I'm going to know the sins, and I'm going to know the brokenness, I'm going to know all that stuff. I'm going to know all that stuff. And if I learn how to love my wife in this instance, I can learn how to love God. And there's an ultimatum that God says, teaches, Jesus teaches, right? If you cannot forgive, you will not be forgiven. That's a pretty stiff ultimatum. If you don't forgive, you will not be forgiven. So you better think twice about pointing out the Ned Flanders in your life, because you might just be the Homer in the situation. The nasty person that doesn't know up from down. The person that stumbles along life but is still loved by God just as much as Ned Flanders is. And that guy gets ridiculed, and his children get ridiculed because he's teaching them about Jesus Christ. Know that you will be the enemy of this world. Mm-hmm. And Jesus again says specifically, if the world hates you, know that it's hated me before you. Again, it's promises. Jesus never once promised us it was going to be easy. Jesus never once said it was going to be a rose garden. He never once said that it was going to be the most simplest thing in the world. That's why every single time somebody comes into the church, I warn them. You've heard me warn you all over and over and over again. And then when the storm comes, guess what the first thing you do is? We're about to die. And what do I tell you? Focus on Jesus. Keep your mind sober. Keep your mind in the place. Build on the foundation the correct way. Out of every single thing that the church teaches, fasting and all that stuff, the most important thing for everybody to do is learn how to pray. And if you learn how to pray, you're going to end up being like Ned Flanders. You're going to love God. You're going to be ridiculed, and you're not going to care one bit who's going to ridicule you. Because my King and my God are the most important thing in my life. Beyond my wife, beyond my children, my vehicle, my home, whatever it is that I have, there's nothing more important than the Lord my God. Seek first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and everything will be added unto you. It's a promise. Those things are not idle words. You have to read the scriptures, building on that foundation. Read about the saints, building on that foundation. Learning how to pray, building on that foundation. Coming to confession, learning how to build on that foundation. Every single time you start building on that foundation and you think it's all sure, the storm's going to come, it's going to wipe it all away, and you're going to say, well, I guess I wasn't where I needed to be yet. And you keep on building over and over and over again to the last day that you take a breath. But as for today, we serve God. We're going to glorify him. We're going to praise his name. And make sure that the Lord have mercies and the Kyrie eleisons are joyful and happy. Because we're asking God, we're petitioning him for all these things. That's what liturgy is. You're here to work. Every single person here, by the way, is called to work during the liturgy. This is not a worship service. This is a work service. We glorify God and we praise his name in all that we do. All right? Father, Son, Holy Spirit.